Warcraft 3 was a real-time strategy game made by Blizzard, the same company that makes Diablo, World of Warcraft, and StarCraft. And it wasn't quite as popular as games like StarCraft and StarCraft 2 because it didn't make a highly competitive online scene. But I still enjoyed it a lot. Now, Warcraft 3 came out in, I believe, 2002, 2003 with its expansion, and that was just the right time for me to get into a real fun online game. I didn't necessarily play games online too much before Warcraft 3 came out. I'd play with my friends and Boy Scouts in school, and it was just something you'd do after you got home. You hopped on battle.net and played Warcraft 3. I usually played 3-on-3. Today, I actually still play a bit of Warcraft, but it's not necessarily in the core game. You see, Warcraft 3's greater legacy has to be what it helped Blizzard try out and the different games that it spawned. See, there was a highly entertaining modding community for the Warcraft 3 game where people would make maps and new game styles that were sent all over the internet and you got to play all over the place. I remember Helm's Deep being an interesting twist on Warcraft 3 and Lord of the Rings. I remember the hero battle arena being real fun, and of course all its varieties like Pokemon and DBZ and all those things. Tower defense was another popular one, which I don't think it was invented for Warcraft 3, but it was definitely popularized. And then there was Defense of the Ancients. Now, Defense of the Ancients, I didn't necessarily play when I was younger. The learning curve is very high. I didn't necessarily get it, and I wasn't very good at it. But my friend Bill told me about it recently, and I just got into it and started playing the crap out of it. Now, since Blizzard came out with Warcraft 3, Dota has probably survived longer than any of the other map varieties that come with Warcraft 3, and has actually turned into its own free games, and soon to be its own traditional pay-for-play games, which is kind of amazing. This game's spawned something that lasted so long. Another thing that I noticed about Warcraft 3 was that, especially with its expansion, Blizzard was able to test out ideas that it would use for World of Warcraft, which was a huge game that I refuse to play. In the expansion Frozen Throne, there wasn't necessarily a traditional orc campaign like you'd find in the first game or StarCraft or anything like that. It was this weird game where you ran around as some specific heroes and helped out all these people on these missions around a world map that was essentially where they were from. Does that sound a lot like World of Warcraft? Because it totally does to me. Also, the focus on heroes, which is my favorite part of the game, was also something that would lead to the hero-based play in World of Warcraft. So I really think without Warcraft 3, you wouldn't necessarily see a lot of the things that happen in World of Warcraft because they were testing them out right there. Besides the heroes, which were really cool and really fun to play with, I thought the art design in Warcraft 3 was really cool as well. You had all these fantasy characters like the armored chivalrous knights, the shamanistic orcs, the demons coming from another world, the vampiric demons, the dreadlords, which were some of my favorites, the undead, the elf undead, and just this crazy night elf creation, which I hadn't necessarily seen too much of. They were all some very cool characters, and some of them even stick with me to this day, specifically the dreadlords, like I said earlier, the night elf demon hunter with his blind vision. That sounds weird, but he could see the demons, but he was blind, with the blades all in his hands. It was just very cool, and some of those designs actually live on in Defense of the Ancients, though they've been modified a little bit with some of the new games coming out. Of the four races, I definitely had my favorites for different reasons. They were all cool, but I had different strategies. I felt like I was best as Orc. The progression of their units from the basic infantry to the more complicated units made a lot of sense to me, and I could sometimes rush in and help out in any 3-on-3 game I was in. Humans were fun just because you had the knights. They were on horses, they could move fast, and they had a lot of armor, so that helped. The undead, I felt like, had a really good air force. The dragons were really strong, and if they went with any anti-air against you, you can just use the gargoyles to tear them apart. The night elves were really fun, but it seemed like they were pretty complicated. Some of their magic users were also their heavy melee units, and they were a little tricky to figure out, though they did have chimeras, which were oh so enjoyable. I highly recommend you play Warcraft 3. It's kind of an underrated classic from Blizzard, if such a thing can exist.